Hello, my little wordlings. Today we're going to review this video called Books I Refuse to Read by the YouTuber Leena Norms. Now, I've never heard of her, but after perusing her channel, I foresee myself becoming a quick fan. So let's see if we agree with any of these assertions.
My life changed forever when I heard this phrase, mash potato books. Coined by the wonderful Ariel and Raylene from Books Unbound, it means, and I quote, a book you keep meaning to read but keep putting it off. You find yourself saving it for the right time, and it just means you end up ignoring it. The reason it's a mashed potato is because mashed potato is Raylene's favourite thing on a Sunday roast plate, and she'd always leave it to last, savouring it to be enjoyed when it inevitably ended up cold. And I honestly...
Okay, so far, yeah, I feel that a little too much. I have a couple of books like that I haven't read. More than a couple? A couple means like 1,000, right? Yeah.
I didn't go to school for math.
Haven't found a better analogy for my bookshelves right now. If you follow me on Instagram, you'll know that I counted my books that I owned at the end of last year, and some home truths were discovered. Of all the books that I owned, 306 remain unread, which is an extortionate amount of books. Although considering I'm averaging between 70 and 100 books a year, not an undoable number, and certainly not enough to make me feel well prepared, say, if I had to...
I might have a few more than that I haven't read. I would just like to point out that buying books and reading books are two different hobbies.
Stay in this house for 10 years. This would not be enough books for me. But while the world outside isn't crumbling and I am marching towards an inevitable mortality moment, I would like to read the books that I'm excited to read while I'm excited to read them. And this bad habit of separating book buying as a hobby from book reading needs to end. So in this video, I'm going to be taking my first steps towards recovery. I have picked 10 books from my shelves that I have had for a very silly amount of time, so I'm going to shake off the shame, explain to you exactly why verbally I haven't read these books yet, and hopefully through some kind of catharsis or shared shame, I will feel a little bit better about it. And then at the end of the video, I'll tell you my plan on how to remedy this so we don't have to keep doing it. Are you in?
Get rid of the book.
Good. The first book on the list is How Should a Person Be by Sheila Hetty. Now, I've picked all of these books not only because I really need to read them this year, but also because I think they exemplify in different ways all the different ways we avoid reading. And this one is a great example because Sheila Hetty is one of my favourite authors of all time. She's only got 3 books. I've read 2 of them, but this is her most famous one. It's the one that people hold close to their chests and are like, oh, how should a person be? And I think now I'm saying it, the reason that I'm worried to read it is because I like Sheila Hetty being one of my favourite authors. And if it turns out that I don't like her most famous book, I might have to stop saying that. So as long as this is on my shelf and I own it and it's in a row with all my other Sheila Hetty books, I can still be a Sheila Hetty fan. But if we don't get on, my identity...
The first book I thought of when she's talking about this is called When the Crow Flies, or yeah, I'm pretty sure it's When the Crow Flies, by Anne Marie MacDonald. I love Anne Marie MacDonald. I've read books by her that I absolutely love. This one has been difficult for me to read, and I've read like a few pages here and there literally over the years. And I don't want to stop though, because I feel because I like her books, I have to read all her books. Maybe I should take a page from this and just say, Fall on Your Knees is one of the greatest books ever written. Maybe I should just leave it at that and not read this one. Oh God, that was hard to say. Her reasoning is actually a lot more logical than I thought it was going to be based on the title. Now I always go on trusty Goodreads, and to be fair to Sheila Hetty's lowest rated book is this book that she's speaking of. And it somehow happens to be her most famous as well. So I can see why she would want to put that away. Okay, let us continue.
She has to change, and I don't like it. And the back sounds good too. Sheila's 20s are going to plan. She got married, she hosts his parties, a theatre has asked her to write a play, and then she realises she doesn't know how to write a play, that her favourite part of the party is cleaning up after the party, and that her marriage has made her feel like she was banging into a brick wall. Sign me up, Sheila. It's make or break for us. 2023 is the year. This is the book that I've probably had for the longest. I got this book in 2012. Here's the thing. This is a book about the musical Wicked, and it's academic, I think. I wouldn't know. I haven't freaking read it. I wrote my dissertation on the book that Wicked the musical is based on, by Gregory Maguire. And after I handed in said dissertation, I realised that this book existed. So I was like, well, obviously I have to read it. And then when it arrived, I thought,
Okay, gotta throw in my 2 cents. Wicked was good. Son of a Witch was good. Out of Oz wasn't my favorite, and oh, I forget the name of it, but the one that was about the Cowardly Lion wasn't my favorite. So the 2 first ones were good. The 2 last ones weren't great in the grand scheme of things. I still was happy that I read them though.
what if it points out something about this book and this story that I didn't think of, and I'm still waiting for my results, and I feel insecure, and I don't want to feel silly, so I'm not going to read this book.
Okay, I gotta tell you. So I had an English teacher, and she did her dissertation on Doris Lessing's, or she did it on Doris Lessing before The Fifth Child came out, and she had her whole doctoral thesis ready to go, and she was about to go defend it, and then Doris Lessing released The Fifth Child, which apparently threw her whole dissertation on its head, and she had to rewrite most of it because of that one book. So her and you don't like to be shown either that you forgot something when you put your heart and soul into it. So this, I understand why she doesn't want to read this book. Get rid of it. In the bin.
That I just paid to have shipped to Wales from America. It's called The Wicked Truth by Susan Ross, and purely because I don't want to be wrong or have missed something, I am not reading this book, even though it's on one of my favourite topics, even though it is a mere 198 pages long. Despicable. I know some of you have done that. John Wyndham's The Day of the Triffids. I'm purely not reading. This is a simple problem. I'm not reading this because I know I'm going to really enjoy it. I know how that sounds. But in dark times, when you're like, what do I even have to look forward to? What even is there left that's new and exciting in this world? I think about the books on my shelves that I know I'm going to enjoy and have lots to say, and then want to go and watch all the adaptations of. It's like a window into a world of deep thoughts that I might need at some point. It's like a first aid kit, a literary first aid kit, okay? I've owned possibly 3 different editions of this book.
Okay, literary first aid kit is now in my lexicon.
Various points in the last 10 years. This is the latest one. It's very, very pretty. The other ones I picked up for like 99p from charity shops and then gave away because I was like, look, I'm never actually going to get around to reading this book. And then it just draws me back in because the plot, I mean, it's about monstrous plants at the end of the...
Un momento.
2 hours later.
I may or may not have added this one to my to-read list. Play.
The world that eat people, but it's like published in the 50s, so there's loads of academic work around it, and you could really get into a little scroll internet wiki hole about it if one were to read it and enjoy it, I imagine. It's going to be me this year. It's going to be me, John. This is another kind of unique one, and maybe only recognisable to the absolute nerds among us, reading Lolita in Tehran. This is a book set in Iran in the late 90s, and it is about 7 young women, all former students, who met every Thursday to discuss forbidden works of Western literature. This is non-fiction, and it sounds absolutely freaking incredible. They discuss Pride and Prejudice, The Great Gatsby, and Lolita, and the reason that I didn't read this, even though I've owned it, I think I probably bought this during my degree, so probably 2010, is because I hadn't read Lolita and I hadn't read...
Okay, I added this one to my to-read list as well. Don't judge me. You know you did it too. And, and the reason I did is for the opposite reason of why she's not going to read this, is I have no uh, desire to read Lolita. I've tried, I failed. It's not for me. I didn't read The Great Gatsby. I did read Benjamin Button, and there's other good F. Scott Fitzgerald books out there. You don't need to read The Great Gatsby. So I think the act of them reading forbidden literature and that part of the story is going to be way more interesting than what they're garnering from the stories themselves, unless they're just trying to make parallels between the books and such. But then it's so easy to go online and try to find, a reference to it. I don't need to read the book. And maybe one day I'll read Lolita. The Great Gatsby is so short. I'm surprised I've never read it, but might actually own it. Gotta look at that.
Stop it. Get some help.
Read The Great Gatsby, and I wanted to read the books that they were referencing before I read this book so I could enjoy it more. I have now read those books, so the excuses are running low. Let's do it. I thought about getting rid of this book loads of times. A Reunion of Ghosts by Judith Clare Mitchell. It's a mysterious family drama, and the reason that I kept it wasn't because of the cover, wasn't even really because of the premise, wasn't because of the writing, because I don't know anything about the author. It's because in 2015, I went to a book launch that was launching a completely different book in a completely different genre. And I knew the author and I went along. And I started talking to the publicist. And instead of pitching me the book that we were actually at the party to celebrate or anything else that was even vaguely in that genre, she couldn't stop talking to me about this book. And her infectious enthusiasm and the fact that I knew that she didn't really have to pitch this to me because it really wasn't the party and this wasn't the thing, and it wasn't even her infectious need for me to read this book has made me keep that one conversation has made me keep this book all this time. I just have a good feeling about it, okay? If you've actually read this book, let me know below. I want to know if I'm clairvoyant, sometimes I just get that gut feeling, but I honestly need to either get rid of this book or read it this year because it's getting embarrassing. There's literally no reason. This book is a proof that dopamine is an effective chemical, or is it a hormone? Is it a chemical hormone? This book is called Running with the Pack, Thoughts from the Road on Meaning and Morality by Mark Rowlands, and it's basically it's like a diet philosophy book.
I saw this book actually, and I was contemplating reading it. I think the reason I didn't is my disability, maybe because I'm already fat and I was never one for outdoors anyways. It would not have the same impact on me as it would on somebody else. And I think that's why I put it down.
Book, not diet, but like a light philosophy book about running and why we as a species ran. And I bought it when it came out, which was 2014, because I really wanted to get into running, and I wanted to feel like it was a really deep decision and not a really shallow decision. So I bought this book and I got the dopamine because I was like, somebody's written a book about how deep running is, and then I did actually get into running, and I still run like 3 or 4 times a week now. So I basically got everything I needed to out of this book without actually having read it. And wouldn't it be really freaking funny if it actually wasn't about that at all and it didn't make me feel good about running and it was actually a bit and the thought of that ironic situation coming up has stopped me reading it all this time. Well, I have a really dysfunctional brain, don't I? Anyway, this is Jean Rhys's Wide Sargasso Sea, and this is a complimentary clapback title to Jane Eyre, and it tells the story. See, I can just reel this off. I don't even need to read the blurb because I know a lot about this book. I've just never read it. It tells the story of Bertha, the locked up attic wife that sets off the middle part of the plot in Jane Eyre. From what I can tell, it's a very
I've been looking for this title of this book because it got recommended to me and I said, ooh, I want to read it, and then I forgot to write down or forgot the title, didn't write it down, blah blah blah. You know what, maybe I'll add it later. I'm gonna add it. Why am I even playing around?
heavy critique of dismissing women of colour in classic literature and the secret power of colonialism on texts that we don't think contain colonialism. And I want to read it, but I just haven't. And I even found this beautiful old vintage copy that was printed in 1992. And it's absolutely bloody gorgeous and short with tiny pages. And I think because it's a classic, I'm like, I must be in the right
a dead body
frame of mind to read this book. I must absorb it. I must give it all of my attention. And because I've had an incredibly busy, apparently 8 years, I haven't ever been in the mood where I'm like, I can give this book the reverence it deserves. And honestly, I think the closest to reverence I can give it is to just read it. So I don't know why I don't do that. Another book that requires the focus that I am intimidated to try and give it is Proust and the Squid, The Story and Science of the Reading Brain by Marianne Wolfe. This is a book where the concept really intrigues me. From a history of the earliest known examples of written language to whether reading online really makes us stupider and why dyslexia can be a gift, Proust and the Squid will ensure that you never take for granted your ability to absorb the written word. This is then it just sat there so that one day I could look forward to being smart enough to be able to read it, because I think it's quite heavy in science. It's got a lot of diagrams about brains, and I just have this preconception of myself as somebody who isn't capable of reading like a whole serious science book, and I don't know why that is, because I actually have read some and it's been fine. So no time like the present, apparently. Actually, do you know what? My brain is like, no time like the future. Let's just do it in the future. This is a children's book by David Armand. I picked this up when I was working at
Why do it today when I can do it next year?
Waterstones in 2013. It's got an amazing, I bought it because it was beautiful. Look at that, like under the dust jacket, like wow. The front is beautiful too, and I just wanted to own a beautiful thing, I'll be honest. It's a children's book about fish, and it really shouldn't take me that long to read, but I
Okay, I feel that if you watched my last video, that is literally the only reason my husband bought me Goth Girl was because it was beautiful.
still haven't, because it was almost too easy. I was like, this is a middle grade book, I can just read that whenever, and I didn't. And honestly, with children's books, I feel like I should either be reading them or giving them to an actual child, because this is a waste of resources. And then finally, Dracula. I own a great copy of Dracula. Look at this copy of Dracula. Have I visited Whitby, where this book is set, several times? Yes. Have I brought it with me every time I visited? Because I was like, I'll just read it when I'm in Whitby, because that will be great. Yes. Have I read books based on Bram Stoker? Yeah, I have read books where Bram Stoker is the frickin' character. I also had a resolution a few years ago to read more Irish writers, and I didn't. So all roads point towards me reading this. But like with a lot of classics, I think they can be intimidating, and I always think I should be in a better frame of mind, or in a different location, apparently. But maybe I'll go back to Whitby this year, but I think by the time I get there, I should have already read this, because now we know that I can't read books set in Whitby, and that's just data that we can't change, so we have to roll with it. Did any of those reasons feel familiar to you? Maybe.
Anyone else feel called out?
Welcome back, Captain Obvious.
Yes, I am!
If you are like me and you're having these problems, you might want to join me in my resolution. And the resolution that I am coming to, the way that I'm going to tackle this bad habit of owning books and never getting around to reading them, is that these 10 books have to be read by me in the year of our Lord 2023, or I have to get rid of them. No ifs, no buts. That has to be what we can't carry on this way. I don't know why I am apparently refusing to read these books, but maybe when I pick them up I'll find out. But cliche though they are, the reels that were like circulating Instagram at the end of 2022 that were like, burn your best candles, write in your best notebooks, did hit a nerve with me, and I was like, look, I could die. I actually almost did die in 2022. I had a bit of a near, that's another story, but the point is, books are a hobby of mine. I'm supposed to like reading. I'm supposed to be excited about the books that I'm about to read, and if I don't enjoy them, I'm allowed to find them a new home. That has been a pep talk for me, but it might have been helpful for you too. Thank you so much for watching this video.
So we're gonna go and give that video a little likey poo. And oh, wish I could unlike it too. I feel it, but okay, I have a really good excuse. You want to hear the excuse? Okay. So I went 2 years without finishing a book at all. When I first started with FND, I figured like if I couldn't sit there and read like I used to read, what was the point? And so I would start reading less and less, and then I just kind of gave up on reading, which sucked because I love reading. I did the same thing with writing too. I stopped writing. I stopped doing a lot of things, and now I've gotten back into it. Last year was the first year in a long time that I met my Goodreads goal. Now, it was only 6 books, I believe, but I finished it. and I was really proud of myself. So I'm not at this point where I'm going to pull books off my shelves, but on the whole, I actually think it's not a bad idea. So for people who are big readers who can finish 50 to 100 books in a year, this is actually not a bad idea. Like, pick 10 books. That's not even all that overwhelming in the grand scheme of things. And I know at some points you're going to be like, "Oh, I don't feel like reading this book right now." Is that kind of proves the point though, doesn't it?
Oh. Yeah, so
By putting my hood back on, I made my hair so much more messy.
No!
Well, my little wordlings, I hope you enjoyed this. I am definitely going to subscribe to this YouTuber because that was pretty cool. And I love the way she presented the information. So she is entertaining. I'm assuming her pronouns. I shouldn't do that. But I hope you have an even brain day, and I will see you next time. Bye.